Hello, everyone. We're so sorry that we've had to cancel the Bass Festival, but we have had a great time with Edicson all this week here at USU, and we're glad to be able to share at least a little bit of that with you through these videos. I wanted to just have a chance to talk with Edicson and for you to be able to kind of listen in on this conversation and get to know him a little bit and his background and all his wonderful experiences, because it's been such a great experience for us here this week, and wanted you to be able to experience a little bit of that. So, Edicson, why don't you tell us just a little bit about like how you got started playing the bass and some of your early musical experiences?
Well, it was endless search of my mother to make me busy, not to let me too much time to mess around and to get in trouble. So she tried with me karate, she put me to swimming academy, and also I ended up in a choir. And it was at some point in the street that she found another friend of her, and she heard about the children's orchestra. So she took me there, and I got all the instruments present, and I wrote violin because it's the most famous thing of classical music. Flute and viola, because the sound, this lower register really took me, took my interest at least. And yeah, they gave me the viola, and the first lesson, the whole thing fell apart. The shoulder rest fell down. To an 11 years old or 10 years old kid, that's traumatic. And then I couldn't tune it because this crow keep coming back. I couldn't really stay fixed where I turned it to tune, and then the bridge collapsed. I thought, oh my goodness. And then on top, the position was with the neck completely bent, and I thought, no way, that I'm not gonna get here. How you say, how you say?
The shoulder. Or
Yeah, I'm not gonna hurt myself.
yeah.
So in the first rehearsal, I saw the bassist very comfortable, just staying, how you say, standing beside their bassist, like waiting for the bass, and we had to play 8 notes in one bar, and they only had to play one. And on the violin, like my teacher Anna said, one needs 1 million notes to tell a story, and on the bass, 1 note can tell a story. So this one note that they had by bar or pro bar, it really took me. I could feel also the presence of the instrument. So I talked to the guys, and then I switched unofficially. And then the administration was mad at me. If you ever change again, you get kicked out here. I stayed, and then I was very passionate to domain it, to command it. A thing that doesn't really, I haven't succeeded so far all this time, but it's a trip of learning. And I was very lucky to meet my teacher, Felix Petit, right after the beginning. And you may disagree with me, but today, now I live in Berlin since nearly 20 years, and I have been able to see other schools, and it's difficult for me to see how, for these prestigious conservatories, only the best are taken. And then if someone wins an audition, it means, oh, what a great teacher. But I have such an admiration for you personally, because you take the students from really the beginning. And that's the hardest job. It's so easy to take already done an already educated bassist, give him 1 or 2 year lesson, the guy wins an audition and says, I am a great teacher. And that's why I admire so much of you. And I only can how you say, I only can appreciate that because of my own teacher. All of his students were also from nothing. And your students are advanced. We were really nothing, you know. My mother was a taxi driver, fired with 50 years old, no job, just to, you know, jump to the car, and one of the most dangerous cities of the world, and earned her daily money to make, you know, to buy something to eat, and it was on daily basis. And still, this guy has taken the challenge several times, not just then. His students are in Japan, are in Europe, many of them. They have won the ISP, they have won the Japan prizes. Not only one, at least 3 have won the ISP. And he's now in Florida. His name is Felix Petit.
Yeah.
And I'm still having lessons with him. Every time I learn a new piece, I play for him first after I learn it, or maybe in the beginning. And it's an endless process. And I was so lucky to meet him because he is so determined to solve problems, not to solve the symptoms of the students. He really goes to the mistake and not to the result. He doesn't repair the result. He goes to the mistake and reset the motion with his teaching. And a part of that, this sistema in Venezuela skip the theory of music and all the bureaucracy and all the orthodoxy of music studying, and we learned by doing. Even when I was there, you know, with a viola, and asking myself, what am I doing here? I didn't know how to hold the viola, I didn't know how to hold the bow. We were having the first general rehearsal of the strings. So we really learned. It's like the car driving lessons. You step into the car and drive. But you have your moments of mistakes, but then you know, I have to really balance how I do it with the foot, and then we did that for many years, maybe 5 years, in the youth orchestra, and then I joined the major orchestra. Luckily, as you know, after 2 auditions, and then actually I was willing to come to America because my teacher told me I should come to Curtis to study with Howard Robinson, and I think I wrote him, or at least I intended. But recently we met and he knew, and he told me, well, it did work out anyway, so no problem. But then I met Jan Saxela in Germany in 2001, and I was picked up to join a world youth orchestra, which will be based in Germany, in the north. And then he told me, when I asked him, where should I go? Because I couldn't go to Curtis or Europe. And he told me, well, go to where music was born. You know, Bach and Schubert and Beethoven and Mozart, and they all, that was, you know, their place. So I took that, and I wanted to study with him, and he told me, no, he doesn't teach anywhere, but if I would join the Kayam Academy of the Berlin Philharmonic, then I would have the chance to study with him. So I did that with 16. They didn't invite me, and he and his boss at that time, the principal, Klaus Stoll, had to argue with the director of the academy in order that she would admit and made an exception to invite me for the audition, because actually these studies are post-grade studies. So she called, the secretary called me by phone and told me, you are, with this telephone call, you are admitted to do the audition in 3 days' time in Berlin. So I took the plane via Amsterdam with KLM, which is now gone from Venezuela, and was there, and Jan changed everything of what I brought, changed octaves, changed notes, changed slurs, changed everything. I think I had a huge blackout in the audition. really had a hard time. I didn't know what to do and where to play. But somehow they accepted me, and then I started a whole year later because I had to finish school in Venezuela. And when I arrived 1 year later, 6 weeks after, were this audition for the orchestra, which I luckily got a chance to play the trial.
This was for the Berlin.
For the Berlin Philharmonic membership. And I had maybe 7 or 8 lessons with Maestro Stoll. And he, of course, he make the last details, and he changed my life. Because it's, he told me, he teach me, he taught me the traditions of Germany in German music. I was playing Beethoven 3, 5, 6, 7 and 9, and then I was playing Mozart 40, 41. So it was really necessary to know how they approach to it. And then I realized when I got the job that it was just the first of 3 years of trial under observation, and then a very narrow audition election after that. And they took me and I stayed. And then I learned so much from the orchestra. I learned from Stravinsky to Henze to Schubert, Haydn with Simon Rattle, which was a highlight. And Mozart and Beethoven, and with great conductors, great soloists, and Brahms, Bruckner, which I had never dreamed of, and Mahler and Abbado and Haydn, and Boulez and Schoenberg and Berg and Weber. And then I met Heinz Holliger, the oboe composer and conductor from Switzerland, and he introduced me to modern music. And then I started playing with him Salenka, the trio sonatas, and playing his pieces for the solo, and then he would just write me a certain list of pieces which I should learn from, which are Elliot Carter, Yuri Kurtak, Berio, Klaus Huber, Alexander Yemnitz, the student of Schoenberg, and who else? So many, Donald Di Martino, the duo with oboe, Cinque Fragmenti, and Alfred Schnittke, and I went that list through the next years, and then I recorded one contemporary CD with him together, and then my dream always, because of Janes Saxer, had advised me to learn about Schubert and Bach in the Anna Berlsma recordings. Sure. I did that, and not only that, but other things, and Radu Lupu for Schubert and other things too. I definitely was obsessed with this cellist, and once I was asked to go to Rotterdam to the Gerge Festival and teach there, I told them, look, I would love to go, but then I would love to get a lesson from one of your treasures in Holland, which is Anna Belsma. And then they organized it, and I got to meet him, and we came well with each other until the end, until he just died last year, recently in July. And it were 10 years of friendship, of learning, of 3 times a year private lessons, 2 days each time, and very intense. And I was willing to learn. I had the sound in my ear, I had the recording, I had the dream, and then he explained me how. And then I had to, of course, play from manuscripts to avoid misunderstandings of editors. I had to, really, how you say, take my historical instrument and put a setup which would fit the ancient music and that would fit our modern times, because we have bigger halls than they used to have. And he always insisted me, you don't have to play as strings, that's expensive and that's tricky. But he liked the bass from the beginning, the sound, and then I organized the Hammerhead 18th century model bow after the advice of one other colleague of mine, Ulrich Wolf. and I had to learn everything, you know. And then Janne had taught me, of course, already about the Viennese tuning, and I tried the Van Hal, and then I tried Mozart, then I tried Hofmeister. And Klaus, my teacher Stoll, he was very touched that I went through it, because he never dared to experiment the Viennese tuning. Janne had, but I think 1 or 2 pieces.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 pieces.
Maybe you could explain Viennese tuning, because that's what you used for the Dittersdorf, right?
Yes, that's actually the tuning that Mozart and Haydn knew. You know that Mozart used to play chamber music in Vienna. He was not worthy of becoming the composer of the choir. That was Salieri. And then he was just being engaged or booked to play some Sundays, chamber music. So he would play quartets with Haydn in the viola, with Dittersdorf playing the violin beside him, and Van Hal playing the cello. And that's how these fellows, they had fun. Some critic wrote from that period that they didn't play together all the time. Can you imagine all these 4 tempers trying to cope with each other? Luckily, Van Hal wrote us a piece in the 18th century for the Viennese tuning, which was the bass he knew, tuned in thirds and fourths. Actually, a major chord with the dominant in the bottom. You know, if you're in D major, A, D, F sharp, A, or if you're in E flat major, which is very normal, B, S, G, B, and everything is across the strings. You finally get, let's say, a much more worthy instrument, like violin or cello or viola, with a really low and really high string, which is not the case of our 4th tuned double bass, which is more narrow.
Sure. It's amazing to watch you play the Dittersdorf and to see all those arpeggios that are just straight across.
Yeah.
You know, and the harmonics where you don't have to be trying to jump around to navigate that, and the resonance that the instrument can have in that tuning.
Yes, you know, all these wonderful instrumentalists like Kraft or the Haydn Concerto and Boccherini, they all play only through all 4 strings in thumb position. They believed in what Arner says it was a family conversation, where the lowest string is the grandfather voice, and the 3rd lowest string is the father voice, and then the 2nd string is a child, or a teenager, or sort of whatever, maybe the son, and the highest string is the mother's role, role.
Yeah. Can you talk about that in relation to the Bach suites? Because I know you were referencing that earlier this week in a lesson, and how we sometimes play so many of those movements just on the G string and the D string,
Yes.
and we kind of cut out some of those roles that you're talking about.
Of course, we're certainly in debt to those who dare and went through the eyes, really making the first steps to approach the Bach suites. Those, if I'm not wrong, they were François Rabat, and I'm trying to think. Well, of course, Paul Casals, without any doubt. But I mean, in the bass, I remember François Rabat.
Right. And I think Gary has some recordings of almost all of the suites, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but I think maybe, I don't know, 30 or 40 years ago.
Right, old ones, yeah.
Yeah, the suites were really taboo. And it has been a shame. I was so grateful to all my, my predecessors?
Yeah, predecessors, yeah.
Predecessors who cleaned up the way for us younger bassists. They did what they could. They were so had an incredible, immense courage to dream about it. I know until maybe 4 years ago, I didn't even dream of playing Bach on the bass because I was under the wing of Anner. And I remember him telling me in our first meeting that he doesn't teach bass players who wants to play for him Bach because it doesn't make sense for him. And luckily I was there with Dietersdorf and Haydn and Mozart. And even then he asked me in the first place, are you sure that is the tuning for that piece? Because I was playing, vertically.
Oh, sure.
And then he teach me how to cross the string and tell me why. These colors, which makes the instrument richer, makes this family conversation. If you play the normal G there, the fourth string, and it's not the same maturity of the open first string. Here you have experience, you have a belly like mine, you have maybe a beard, which I don't still haven't managed to have, and maybe a mustache. So it's really, it speaks for itself.
Yeah.
It has more dimensions than just the great open string, which you can't do much with it.
Sure.
And I don't know if that will change, but I'm very happy that I could find a way to use also the other strings and not just two strings in order to match the cello approach to these works, these pieces. And also in the classical concerto is the same. In that time you must imagine that the virtuosity was not in the left hand. The virtuosity was always in the right hand, and as Geminiani said in his books in the 16th century or the 17th century, the bow was played as it comes. There was not this very recent way to play, to always start with a down bow and end with a down bow. That was very much coming from the French uniformation. The French, they made that everyone had the same thing in their hands. That's how the basses ended up playing like this, because they needed, the bass comes from the gamba, and the gamba is under the stick. You grab it under the stick, and then the violone was also under the stick. There were, of course, some players that did, but it was in France the 20 barons of the king who were specialists in this, to mark every bar with the down bows and end it with a down bow. It had nothing to do with the previous centuries. The bow was always as it comes, back and forth. Doesn't matter what comes. And that is how Bach really speaks for itself. He was a fencing master. The real virtuosity in that time you could only notice by the right hand. That was the virtuosic hand. Left was not that important like nowadays. And like that, it's everything. I mean, Mozart also did the scordatura for the concertante. In the viola, he really insists to tune up half tone every string in his E flat concertante, and it makes sense. E flat is an open string, B flat is an open string. Everything is in one position. You don't have to shift. There are many harmonics, and then the viola becomes not a muted instrument beside the violin. It's also a bright instrument. And Bach also knew it. And you can see it in the fifth suite when he detunes after already 4 suites with the quint, fifths. Sure. He detunes for the fifth, the A string to G. It was the Bolognese tuning, and it makes sense when you think that the key is C minor. And then you have the dominant, not just a dominant that you play and it happens to be the dominant, but with a resonance string, which makes a nice effect around that note. It's also the heart of the piece, and it's very sad to see nowadays that this is being rejected by modern cellists and modern schools. It's coming up slowly because we are in kind of fashion. Of course, I'm sure that Casas didn't know that. How would he know that? It has to be done research work, which he had no time to. He had to conduct, he could teach, play himself. He was a star. But that's our duty now. Take over. And I feel very lucky to have taken over all these transcriptions of the suites. For instance, the G major third suite, which a high C string you can play it, and that it sounds in the right key, like the cello. I didn't do it today because I forgot my C string in the hotel, but I was amazed how well it still works that low.
Yeah.
And
you were just in solo tuning for those performances.
Yeah, I happened to have my Viennese tuning set up with the high B flat. I just went down. It's anyway an A string.
Sure.
It was just pulled up.
Yeah.
And Paganini also believed in scordatura. His violin concerto was actually in E flat. And nowadays everybody plays in D. But he tuned half tone higher, the violin, and Viba, this Baroque composer and violinist, to play his rosary sonatas on the violin, you need 4 different violins with 4 different scordaturas tuning, and he was so creative with the rosary sonatas. The first the Nativity, then the Passion, then the Resurrection, whatever, and they all mean, the cross, then the cross, the strings, and the lowest is in the highest position, and the highest is in the lowest, and it's always been there since so long. Yeah. And it first died with Beethoven meeting Dragonetti, who played in fourth, and seeing the possibility to double the cello octave. And since that moment, he asked the Viennese bass players to switch their tuning from thirds and fourths, we do, to tuning fourths like Mr. Dragonetti, in order to double well the cello octave. They had 5 strings. They didn't have extension. And so they could play the storm of the Pastoral easily. Well, I don't know if that easily, but I'm sure they did. Yeah, easier. And who buried the Viennese double bass in Vienna was Bottesini himself in 1841, when he had his concert in Vienna on 3 strings, playing Bellini, playing Paganini, playing Donizetti, playing his own pieces, and nobody wanted to play this anymore because the star of Vienna, Beethoven, asked not to, and then these guys, they felt like, what are we doing? Right. And it died, and now I took kind of bit over to record at least 10 works for it, 7 concerti, and then 2 duos. I mean, 1 sonata for cello, 1 sonata with viola, and then the 2 arias, Per questa bella mano, El Selene del tuo fuoco. Per questa is Mozart, Selene is Sperger. So I took a bit over to record that, and then let's commission new pieces for the tuning, like you saw the Forgotten Lullaby. It's 1 mini movement of an entire suite for this tuning, and then the 4 voices Fugue for double bass solo by Heinz Holliger. You maybe have heard the piece.
I don't know if I heard that piece.
Yes, it's a hell of a difficult piece. 11 pages, all black. Wow. For Viennese tuning, and then now Latin American music with the Barroquianas, written by Frank Osher. And so many pieces from contemporaries, Kelterborn, Georg Friedrich has, who recently wrote me a solo piece, Toshio Hosokawa. Yeah. And it's, we're ashamed, like I said in the beginning, and just trying to collaborate a little. Yeah. and then make some space for the next to take over.
Yeah. Can I ask you, you're talking about, so much music, and I know earlier when we were about to record the Bach suites, you were playing a little bit of the second suite, and you were kind of up in the air, like, maybe I should play the second suite, and then you decided, we'll stick with the plan and do the first and the third. But I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I can't imagine just on the fly trying to decide, should I just play all of the third suite or all of the second suite, or let me flip a coin. Like, that's so much music to have in your mind. Can you talk about like how you go about learning music, and maybe how you go about memorizing music? Like, do you have a specific approach? And maybe I'll just ask too, because I know this came up earlier this week too. If solfege plays a role in that at all?
Yes.
And kind of how you approach that?
Definitely a big key in our language and in our way to learn music is the solfege. And
this is the fixed do solfege is how we think of it, because here in the States in music schools, oftentimes we learn where whatever key you're in, that tonic is do.
Oh my gosh.
So it's always changing, versus C always being do, D always being re, and re in between. And
yeah, I feel very lucky to remember the pieces by their name.
Yeah.
So if it's Fourth Symphony of Tchaikovsky, then fa mi re do,
sure.
And it's fun.
Yeah.
Then I know the notes, what they're called, and then I can memorize them, and in my mind to play them by memory.
Yeah.
I recall them.
Sure.
I call the memory.
Yeah.
This thought. And of course, while I want to learn a piece by memory, which is new, or the old ones, it's four memories come to play. The first is, of course, the optic memory, the one you see. Then comes, of course, the audible, for your ears. And then comes the muscle memory, which is made up of electricity or chemical reactions
like
of the nerve system. Yeah. And then the most important, I find, is the intellectual memory, which is when you know the piece begins in D major, and then it goes to B minor, and then there is a transition to G major, so many bars, and then you
analyzing what's happening.
Yes, and then you know the segments of the piece, and then you know the intellectual memory also memorize slurs, bowings, strings, fingering, sounds, colors. Not only just the notes. Sure. The notes are only showing a way deeper message, which hides behind them. And this is our duty, to discover the message of these symbols.
Yeah. At what point when you're learning a piece, how early on do you try to kind of determine what your fingerings or bowings? Do you try and do that at the beginning, or do you wait till you've kind of gotten familiar with the piece, or what's that process like?
I think it changes.
Sure.
Of course, there is, I would say, a good 93% of the piece you hit already from the beginning with the fingering, but there is a 7% that may change.
You have to figure out.
Yeah, the color, maybe, especially when it's in scordatura, which is an instrument that we don't play every day,
sure.
that we pick up maybe once a day or every 2 or 3 days. They were not so familiar with it, and then you end up discovering, actually, the second string sounds better than the first, or tells me more. It is a process, and it always changes. Of course, my first approach is mostly go over 4 strings. I adore how Pinka Zuckerman plays the G string and the D string on the violin. This is a tradition that is no longer anymore actual in our violin schools. We tend to cross strings. It's the easier way. But to really course, now I am contradicting myself because I told you first that we should cross all 4 strings back and forth in order to play horizontally. But on the same time, the romantic pieces, they are full of this, what they call cantinelas, and these cantables, which they are so powerful on the low strings played in high positions. And that is also gone. So if you imagine the ancient repertoire, which should be played horizontally, it's being played vertically, and the romantic repertoire, which should be played vertically in order to have a better legato, in order to have a really to take the juice out of the string and not just to press down on the bridge. Then they cross strings. You know what you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the contradiction. And when you listen to the recordings of Sarasate and Joseph Joachim, they all loved the legato of the left hand, that every note was connected with each other. Nowadays we very much play like piano, one note by one note, and they're not related to each other. And what I find most critical is the real legato of the right hand, which it disappears more and more. We tend to mark so much with the right hand. Yeah, I was working with your students so well. All this matters, and I hope that you agree too.
Yeah, of course.
When they come up with that again.
I mean, and some of this, I think, in some ways, I relate to the left hand as well, as much as the bow is a part of it. But I feel like it's generally pretty easy to play separate. It's always hard to play connected and legato. So that's what we should always work on, because it's not too difficult to separate the notes, to put space in between the notes. But it's really hard to make everything one note right into the next, like a singer, a single breath, you know.
Yeah, you just said it, and a part of that, there is this habit to practice short, and then you practice short something, and then when you speed it up, the gap is still there,
You mentioned,
but it messes up the end result because it's still there. You trained it, you memorized it like that. So that's why I always practice long. Everything, also Mozart or whatever. Of course, if I'm playing continuo, I'm not playing long.
Sure.
And also don't practice the continuo. But in all for the rest. Because there is this also stutter thing.
Stutter.
Stutter. That when someone plays a note wrong, and then instead of seeing why the left hand didn't do the right distance shift, the bow starts to stutter instead of letting the bow by side and carrying. How was it? Mostly now, what I see when I teach is that the vibrato is not regular, it's not constant. Most of students, they tend to vibrate only when they have time, and not when it should be. And then they do nothing. Then the end of the phrase, because now it's a silence, they vibrate it. And then and then mostly shifting is too fast, and that's why they don't hit the note. And I see also another big matter is the point of contact of the string. That most of the students, they change the point of contact in one note, which actually should be between notes. And it should be horizontal. People go up with the bow, and stroke diagonally, and another thing I've seen is the string changes. People tend to use the entire arm to change these little centimeters or inches, which are far from one string to the other, instead of playing the real the legato here, no, with the right hand. Those are actually the most typical problems of students when I meet them. And then I would add the strength of the hand, which it has to be constantly trained. And I find that very much that people just go and play and don't really train.
Sure.
You know, at home I do some flexions and I do some planks. And the same is for the left hand, that we have to train it every day, like toothbrushing. And for all of that, I have exercises from many schools, from Streicher, from Millet, from Petracchi, from Duncan McTeer. We take the best of everyone.
Yeah. Maybe in just a few minutes we'll transition. Maybe just to have you show us maybe some of your favorite exercises or things that are like, I do this every day, like brushing the teeth, or stuff that are just part of your routine.
I can show you maybe.
Yeah. Maybe as a part of that, I would be curious too, because we tend to have students from a variety of backgrounds, some that are very early on in their development, and then others that are more advanced. And you mentioned your early teacher and how great he was at taking students from the beginning.
Yes.
And so I would be curious, like what advice you have for students that are pretty early in their development, or also what approaches to practicing or playing do you think have led to the success of students who started from the very beginning and, like you said, were winning competitions after that? What are some of those approaches that really help them be successful?
Well, certainly the orchestra practice.
Sure.
Because in orchestra you learn everything. You learn not only to play Eccles and to play Capuzzi, but you learn to play Haydn and Beethoven. And then your playing is immediately richer. And maybe if you're lucky, Shostakovich and Prokofiev. And if you're also again lucky, some Schubert and Mahler. And definitely the orchestra practice is essential to cut the interest of the young musician, and then he needs to become better. So his own pressure puts him
Motivation
to do what he has to do and pay the price that he has to pay in order to become better. And of course time is priceless and it's very valuable. It's good to always be open and take the best from everyone. Because I believe the truth, nobody has the absolute truth, it's spread. Everybody owns a piece of the truth.
Right.
And only those who are open enough to watch and also maybe take something from someone else.
This from this person, this from this person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those may have the most in their own bag. They collect from everyone.
Yeah.
And music has always been open for everyone. It's like the sun. It doesn't really goes away.
Yeah.
If you hate the classical music, you have pop. If you have pop, you have rock.
Yeah.
And if you have rock, you have tango. If you hate tango, you have salsa. If you hate salsa, you get merengue.
So
it has always been there. You can't run from it. It's like the sun.
Yeah. Well, let's go over some of those exercises, and
Yes.
For those of you who are watching, you'll notice that Edicson is actually playing a French bow German style here, because we had a little bit of a wardrobe malfunction, I'll call it, with his bow during the concert. Maybe we'll put that in the outtakes.
All right, yeah, that would be great.
Video. Yeah.
That would be great. So, I I will demonstrate a few exercises which I like very much to work.
Move this. Why don't we have you maybe come back just a little bit,
Yes.
and then I think we'll be able to get you
Yeah.
in the camera here.
Yeah, that's much better. So one of the exercises I like to fertilize the left hand is the one by Petracchi, which is he does it with many different variations with the fifth. I think the bass is not tuned.
Oh, yeah, maybe already.
This is
Yeah.
Viennese tuning.
Yeah. Take a second to fix that.
I find very useful to practice staccata of the left hand while
Like the
pressing.
strong attack. Sure. Really hammering. With
Yeah,
the
because
fingers,
then when you get nervous in the concert and the adrenaline goes too high,
yeah.
the muscles become weaker and there is this
Mm.
extra strength of the fingers
Sure,
who will definitely hammer down the string even if you're weaker.
sure.
And I suggested also for people that has their own exercises to strengthen the left hand, which is not Petracchi, to insist to hammer with the left hand, whatever they're doing. And then to solve the shifting problems, I recommend this, also by Petracchi. He does it in octaves. I myself, I think it's a fantastic exercise. I like it actually to practice all the intervals to the same notes because we don't play in octaves.
Sure.
We are here. This is our
And you have every possible.
our work
interval.
area,
Yeah.
let's say.
Yeah.
So I just take the lowest note. And the shifting has to be smooth.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be fast.
Sure.
It should be as slow as I can follow with the ear
Mm-hmm.
the note and then know when to stop. Otherwise I stop too early or too late.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I have all the intervals. And then on top of that, I suggest to do the same thing with the upper octave. And then when you have done that, I suggest to go the next octave, which that was what Bottesini did, you know. Well, now the strings, they need to be clean.
Oh yeah. And here you're kind of pressing on the side of the string.
Yes, I do the same technique. I do the same technique that Bottesini, but he pulled the strings. He pulled the strings to a side and lifted them.
Yeah. And you're kind of pushing on the inside of the string, pushing it to the edge of the fingerboard.
Now the strings are very dirty with the rosin of the concept, but normally it can go a little more smoothly. The thing you use this area for is for Bottesini, because he wrote in his second concerto this place that most of people play harmonic. I cannot do it now because of the tuning.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The Viennese tuning that I have, but it's the place that is la di da di da da.
Sure.
He
Yeah.
writes
Up the triads. Or,
He writes a crescendo. He writes a forte, but how do you do that here in harmonics? Nobody does it. So I believe he used his own technique. And then also the other passage is the it's really opera.
Yeah, right.
Finally. That's for the shifting, and then for the bow, the string changes. Well, first of course half. Just turning the bow without using the whole arm, you know.
Just the,
Here's the real legato, you know. Now the string is not speaking. It's so weird. Yeah, I think the mistake is to go like this. Basically, you see there is a gap there, and then you do quarters, then eighth, and then triplets, and then semiquavers.
Can I ask? I know obviously we don't have an actual German bow here, so it's not as ideal. But can you talk a little bit about just the German bow hold, maybe for people who play German bow,
Yes.
or maybe people who play French but maybe want to experiment a little bit with German bow? What are some of the essential elements of a good German bow hold?
Well, I think the hold is always personal.
Mm.
I cannot tell you this is the only one.
Mm.
Of course, a great player can take the bow with his feet, and it will sound great.
Yeah.
Because you've seen people drawing with their foot
Hmm.
and the feet, and it doesn't really matter. But generally, what is important about the bow hold is not to take the bow, but to hold the bow.
Mm.
And they should be loose and flexible to create, to manipulate, to add. And if this is stiff, there will not be much variety.
Mm.
And it should be an extension of your body, of your arm, of your back. And actually, the tip of the fingers should be like electro points, who actually makes magic and electricity with the stick.
Mm.
The stick becomes an extension of your arm,
Mm.
and not a tool,
Mm.
which is completely strange to your body.
Mm.
It should all meld together. I notice very much when the musician is here and the music is there. I think our message and our duty is to become messengers and not just narrators, but to how you say, incarn the message. And then another exercise, well, spiccato it's a whole chapter for itself, but definitely biting the string, you know.
And you're coming kind of straight down on it
Yeah.
with a little bit of, yeah.
So when I do this, I bite it, and then when I do that, I bite it also, like frisbee throwing. And the point of contact exercises, just with a mirror, from the front to the tip, watching that whatever we play, the bow strokes horizontally and not like this.
Just
Yeah.
straight across.
Yeah, because the point of contact should remain in one note, the equal. And you can change, but between notes for the next note. No? You see? And that is where I always focus with the mirror, that the bow strokes all in the same place, and the both hands move parallelly. If I go down here, that the right hand doesn't stay in the same spot, because then I get a diminuendo.
Closer to the bridge.
Yeah, that it goes down below with the left hand. And things like that, those are actually the principal things that one should care of. Also the posture on the bass. nowadays we tend to lean the bass on us. I think the bass should be straight and we wait for the bass beside it. And I like to also approach the bass, get inside it. And sometimes I see my colleagues playing with the bass in between them and music. So they have a long way to the G string, and then the bow, of course, strokes not
throws off the angle.
not straight. And yeah, I don't like nothing to be between me and the bass, only my belly. And that's why I come here and I kind of face the bass with my tummy, and then I can get so well in the G string. It's like cellists. The best cellists were always those who didn't play with spike, like Boccherini, like Franchomme, like Duport, or Romberg, or Piatti, or Servet, and that's the same was with the basses. The best basses were always playing standing, because they had the freedom to as I say, to incarn the music. And sitting, more than half of your weight is in the chair, and then you have to compensate that by pressing with the right hand, and then the sound, it's always pressed, and it's not natural, and it doesn't resonate so long, and it doesn't project so well in the hall, because it's so pressed that it stays also here. If you let it ring, and it definitely flies. That's what's the point. And I see more and more bass players sitting for comfort. I also play sitting too, but and then when my teacher told me to stand up, I felt a pain in my legs. They told me, look, but I see the fingerboard so well, look. And I was missing the best. And I was having someone between me and the bass, and well, luckily I was 16, and he made me stood up, and now when I play sitting in the orchestra, I play with the same approach than playing standing. I don't put the bass there and here, just put it aside and play with it.
Use your body and use the weight.
Using the what you say, the body and the back. Another common thing nowadays and always have been how the handrest has been damaged and people get injured because of this posture. I think the pressure should be to the back without the thumb. Of course, you cannot learn the bass practicing like this. You get crazy or frustrated because the hand is too weak. Of course, you learn first like this. Of course, it would be nice to try not to get there. And at a certain point, then you should realize, again with the other exercises, that it should be also possible to play without the support of the thumb. It will give you a more life for the left hand, left arm. And of course, something which I didn't do in my entire childhood was to care for the real instrument, which is the body. It's important to stretch, it's important to strengthen those muscles we don't use, it's important to get the length of those muscles who get shorted. It's important to warm up, that the blood circulation in the muscles occurs, by doing it 100 times before you play a note, both arms, and then it's important the temperature of the muscle to be, I don't know, what is it, 37 degrees or Celsius, and otherwise you get a cramp and you get injured because the muscles are such a miracle, but also they have an ideal environment where they function the best. And not only that, but also the nutrition it's important to be careful of the B complex vitamin, the B12, B6, B9, and also the other minerals, magnesium, potassium, calcium, because nowadays the food doesn't have that much. We have to do some supplements in order to get all what we need. Protein is very important to the body. The strongest beast on earth, a bull, doesn't eat meat. He eats plants. And the protein by plants is definitely way more better than the animal. It lasts more, and it gives you more benefits, more results, more strength. So I started to eat vegetal protein, and a part of that, of course, the omegas for the brain, and the Q10, the coenzyme, and so many things that nowadays we don't care about it. The first instrument is you. If you are not well, you will not be well to the instrument. And in the future, I dream of me playing the French bow for Bottesini, and then playing the German bow for Wagner. And I hope I succeed on that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Edicson.
Thank you
This has
so
been
much,
so
Brown.
wonderful. Yes. Maybe any last words of advice for students or young bassists, or anybody who maybe is kind of in the earlier stages of their playing or their career, and here you are, you went from playing in the El Sistema to now the Berlin Phil, and being a wonderful soloist. What advice would you have for young and upcoming musicians and bassists?
Since I am small, I have always experienced that you will always find resistance on your way. You will always be criticized, and you will always find people who would love to be yourself and to have chances like you had, and maybe have your girlfriend, or have your dad who buys you a car, or have your destiny to be born in a beach in Australia. Everybody wants exactly what they don't have.
Sure.
If they have curly hair, they want the opposite. And if they have the opposite, they want their curls. And if they have green eyes, they want blue eyes. So it's normal. It's human beings. And the most important is to, for me at least, to be assured, to be sure that you're doing the right thing. For me, music is bigger than anything else and anyone else. I serve music. I don't serve music industry or nobody. I serve music first. Music was first, and most of us today, we like to teach a lesson to the composers. We teach every day a lesson to Mozart how his music should be. He cannot defend himself. He only barely wrote it in a hurry.
Right.
And the same thing with Bach. We teach him every day a lesson how his music should be. And I think to have the humility, to be humble enough to say, wait, I will bleed first before I change this man's original idea. Of course, sometimes there is a slur which is impossible in fortissimo, yeah? Then you have to change. It's fine, especially if you're in a section. But you will always find, as a young and a later experienced bass player, criticism and people who will make you see if what you do is worth doing it. And then when you keep your way, you see what's worth doing it. And all these obstacles have always been there to just show you if what you are doing is worth doing it, or you should better quit and do something else. Right? That's in every travel I go, I find this wall and these limitations and restrictions and negativity. And when I say I've succeeded, I know why I succeeded. It was to to feel destiny. And we're, as I say, we're ashamed. We're just taking over and giving on.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And we're so glad that at least through this video and the videos of these performances that you can experience a little bit of Edicson's residency here this week. And I know that you're going to be inspired by these performances. So thank you so much for sharing your music with us.
God bless you guys. I'm sorry this happened like that. I'm sure it's perfect how it went. If we have the same impact,
right?
People would see it. People will see what they shouldn't copy, and it's great. And people maybe come up with new ideas, and then maybe, who knows, we will reunite us again.
Yes, that'd be wonderful. That'd be wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.